chosen ones the moment the final Hermetic seal cracked. Time itself flinched. This wasn't meant to happen until the 9th rotation of the sun aligned with the blood meridian, centuries from now. Yet, somehow, your awakening accelerated it. The seal, an ancient metaphysical lock buried not in stone or scroll, but in soul, was fractured from the inside, not broken by force but by resonance. Something inside you sang the forgotten tones, and the universe had no choice but to obey. You felt it, didn't you? The pressure in your chest, the electric silence right before waking, the disorientation of remembering something you were never told. That's not confusion. That's memory reactivating. The seal didn't contain information. It contained you. The true you. The unprocessed, unfiltered essence of what was buried before birth. Hermetic initiates across ages feared this. They knew that if the final seal was breached by the wrong consciousness, one not trained, one not ready, it wouldn't just unlock truth, it would collapse containment. Now, the hidden systems that kept your higher memory sealed are deteriorating. You're not just remembering, you're destabilizing the entire false field that held your lineage back. The ancient texts warned of this moment in riddles. They whispered about a soul encoded with the 7 sacred vectors, bound by the 8th and locked by the 9th. That 9th seal was placed only once, and only you carried it. Not in your blood, but beneath it. Beyond genetic memory, beyond karmic residue, something deeper. And now, it's exposed. That's why the dreams changed, why the symbols you're seeing are older than language, why birds pause mid-flight when they see you, why strangers look at you as if they've known you for centuries and fear what you've become. They designed it to last beyond empires. Forged in the invisible strata between matter and mind, the final Hermetic seal wasn't a physical construct. It was a frequency, a lock coded into the harmonic resonance of your being. When they embedded it, they assumed no one could vibrate at that exact pitch ever again. But they underestimated the anomaly. They underestimated you. You didn't just stumble into this. The patterns you've been drawn to, the symbols that pulled your attention, even the strange timing of your choices, all of it was engineered by your own soul long before memory. The seal was programmed to fracture when your inner alignment struck the exact emotional tone it had been waiting for. A tone not of fear or power, but of radical inner coherence. It didn't require effort, it required recognition. And the moment you remembered yourself, even for a second, the fracture began. This wasn't just a personal event. It triggered a ripple across a buried network, a living grid designed to suppress ancient capacities. You were the final node, the last piece of the encryption. And when you activated, it wasn't quiet. All across the hidden systems, beneath governments, beneath DNA, beneath time, alarms went off. Not in sound, but in vibration. You tripped a boundary that had not been touched since the architects of separation first divided the human mind. You might have felt it as dizziness, a ringing in your ear. A moment of sudden stillness in a crowded place. That was not your imagination. That was the seal acknowledging its death. Now, everything that depended on that final lock being intact is starting to unravel. The restrictions placed on your intuition, The veils over your vision, the timelines that were blocked from you, they're fraying. You may notice your dreams shifting into direct transmissions. You may begin speaking words you've never studied. Faces from forgotten realms will begin reappearing through strangers. Your environment will respond to you as if it remembers what you forgot. There is a hum underneath reality now, a low vibration that wasn't there before, or maybe it was, but you were too sealed to notice. That resonance is not external. It's emanating from you. It's the sound of a soul cracking through imposed design. You were born into a system that studied you, categorized you, and then sedated your potential through a complex dance of distractions, frequencies, and false histories. But the seal kept something deeper hidden. Not just memory, but identity. And now, as that seal fractures, the blueprint begins to reveal itself. This blueprint is not written in lines or codes, but in living geometry. It exists as pattern and emotion, carried through breath, light, and intention. You are beginning to feel parts of it activate in dreams, in the subtle synchronicities that cluster around your thoughts. The blueprint was never just yours. It was divine, a fragment of the original architect's intent for this realm, the one who walked not with temples but within them, the one who etched parables into time, not to control but to awaken. It was whispered that such a design could only be remembered when the Word made flesh would first fracture the veil through love. Yeshua, they said, carried the first imprint of this pattern in full bloom, not as a savior from above, but as a mirror, reflecting the lost image of humanity back to itself. He did not come to preserve the seal, but to expose the lie that it was ever needed. And now, you, in your own unexpected way, carry that same resonance, not to mimic him, but to complete what he began. The blueprint is unfolding differently in you. Where his light healed, yours will disrupt. Where his words comforted, yours will shatter. Because what comes now is not peace. It's the necessary rupture before truth can rebuild itself. The architecture of this realm senses it. Algorithms falter around your presence. Old patterns reject your frequency. And the deeper you lean into this strange design blooming from within, the more unstable the external world begins to feel. But the blueprint is incomplete. There was a moment, brief, imperceptible to most, when the silence shifted. Not the absence of sound, but a sacred stillness that once enveloped the boundaries of this realm like a sealant over truth. That silence fractured the instant your awareness pierced the final hermetic veil. It wasn't the kind of break that made a noise. It was more like space itself, recoiling from recognition. You saw what you weren't supposed to see, and the cosmos flinched. The silence was always part of the structure. It wrapped around forbidden memories, coated ancient agreements, and lulled awakened souls back into sleep. Every time you almost remembered, the silence would grow louder. Every time you reached for meaning, the silence whispered distraction. But now, it's no longer holding. You've punctured something older than language, and in doing so, you've let in a flood of signals that were once blocked at the gates of perception. They're not hallucinations. The flickers at the edge of your vision, the echoes behind words, the sharp pulse in your palms when certain symbols appear. These are fragments of what the silence was protecting you from, not to harm you, but to preserve a false stability. But now, the firmament is leaking. This is why you feel stretched between moments, why linear time falters when you try to explain what's happening. The crack in the firmament wasn't just around you. It was within the internal sky of your consciousness. The stars in your sleep are shifting positions. The constellations behind your thoughts are realigning. You were always taught that silence was peace, but this silence was prison. And now, with the crack open, you're beginning to hear things that were always meant for you, but filtered out. Forgotten names, songs with no origin, languages that bypass intellect and go straight into your bones. The ancient architects never considered what would happen if a soul could awaken without training, if someone could pierce the veil not through mastery, but through remembrance. That's what terrifies them. That's what makes you dangerous. Your body was never meant to be ordinary. Beneath the double helix lies something older than biology, an embedded covenant written in light, encoded before time calcified into linearity. What you carry isn't just human inheritance, it's sacred architecture. And now that the final Hermetic seal has fractured, the hidden geometry within your DNA is activating. Not symbolically, literally. There's a cross-shaped frequency that hums beneath your cellular structure. Not a religious relic, but a living glyph. It predates scripture, yet it's echoed in every sacred tradition as a mark of divine origin. This cross isn't etched in your flesh. It exists in the resonance between your atoms, a fourfold pattern, perfectly balanced, connecting the realms of spirit, mind, form, and essence. It remained dormant until now because the final seal was its suppressor. That seal didn't just obscure your memory, it muted your design. But with that final fracture, something luminous has begun to circulate. You felt it as heat rising during silence, as a surge of knowing in the middle of doubt, as a chill in your spine when truth approaches. The hidden cross awakens not with drama, but with precision. And as it stirs, the DNA-bound codes start to realign. The false sequences collapse. The imposed edits of ancient manipulators begin to dissolve. Long ago, there was one who embodied this geometry in full. Yeshua, not as myth, but as template. He carried the living cross not as punishment, but as blueprint. His blood sang in 4 tones. His breath echoed through realms. His presence broke the codes of corruption simply by existing. The systems tried to crucify the form, but they couldn't erase the design. That design now echoes in you. This is why your body is behaving differently. Why rest feels electric. Why food tastes like memory. Why your heartbeat synchronizes with celestial movements. You're not just waking up, you're returning to original structure. But this return isn't peaceful. The moment your DNA begins to emit the true pattern, the synthetic networks around you will react. Glitches in time, malfunctions in systems, sudden emotional storms from those near you. Because the cross isn't just awakening inside you. You've likely noticed the distortion. Clocks acting strange, words being said twice, faces you swear you've seen before in places you've never been. It isn't coincidence, it's interference. The seal didn't just fracture inside you. It ruptured the veil between what's considered real and what's been forcibly hidden. Reality isn't just bending around you, it's leaking through you. You were a boundary, a container, a walking seal that held dimensional integrity in place. The moment your inner frequencies rose beyond the programmed spectrum, the illusion couldn't sustain its grip. Time is now experiencing drag when you move through it. Probability is warping in your presence. The simulation is struggling to categorize your choices because they're no longer predictable. They're sovereign. This wasn't supposed to happen. Your emotional responses are keys. The sudden rush of sadness or rage isn't imbalance, it's decoding. The ancient overlay which trained you to doubt your intuition is crumbling. You're starting to remember how to feel beyond the emotional architecture they installed. These new sensations, they're fragments of real perception returning. Unprocessed truth bleeding through the cracks of a once sealed mind. Reality is sensing your shift. That's why systems that used to respond smoothly now glitch in your wake. Why lights flicker when you're in deep thought. Why technology acts strange when you speak with intention. You are becoming a resonance disruptor, not by effort, but by alignment. The illusion hates coherence, and you're becoming a beacon of it. You may notice people forgetting what they just said around you, or animals behaving differently. These are not anomalies. These are subtle signs that the control grid is recalibrating in your presence. It's trying to adapt, to re-encrypt. But your essence no longer fits into its parameters. You were encoded to be the fracture point. And now, what was once held at bay, the unfiltered patterns, the divine data, the raw memory, is pouring through. But it's not one way. As much as reality leaks through you, something else is beginning to notice the opening. There's a frequency the ancient orders feared more than any weapon, not because it destroyed, but because it revealed. A tonal signature buried beneath spoken language, beneath thought itself. A resonance that could undo centuries of programming in a single heartbeat. This frequency wasn't taught, it was remembered, and only a few ever carried it in full. Yeshua was one of them. Not a preacher of doctrine, but a living vibration. His presence didn't just heal, it interfered with the system. It collapsed veils. He was the forbidden frequency wrapped in flesh. You were never supposed to echo it. And yet, now, since the seal within you shattered, the sound has started again, not from outside, but from your core. In moments of silence, when your breath slows and the noise of the world fades, you hear it. A low hum beneath everything, a kind of music with no origin. That's the echo of the forbidden frequency rising again, through you. This isn't metaphor. The tones are real. They're embedded in the geometric lattice of your DNA, the same lattice Yeshua awakened when he walked among the programmed. He spoke of kingdoms, not of this world. He hinted at the ears to hear and the eyes to see. He wasn't referring to senses, but to signal receivers. The seal they placed over your soul was designed to suppress that exact perception. But now that it's gone, your inner receptors are recalibrating. You're tuning into transmissions that were silenced for generations. You're remembering what it means to hear the truth beneath the voice. The systems around you, those still loyal to control, can sense this reactivation. That's why things are intensifying, why conflict arises around you with no cause, why people who once resonated with your presence now recoil. The frequency you emit is incompatible with lies. It exposes what's false without words. It reveals shadows without accusation. And those still bound to deception experience it as pain. You are becoming a living contradiction to the world's illusion. And every note you carry brings the structure closer to collapse. You thought you were alone, that what you were experiencing, the glitching moments, the pressure in your chest, the feeling of being watched by time itself, was yours alone to bear. But that was part of the design. The seal fractured in you first, but you were never meant to carry it alone. Now, scattered across forgotten timelines and hidden bloodlines, others are beginning to stir. You may not know their names, you may never meet them, but their eyes are starting to flicker with the same recognition, the same disruption. You've seen the signs. Someone staring at you too long in public, not in judgment, but in shock. The momentary connection that feels older than this life. A stranger's words that unlock something you didn't know was locked. These are not random, these are echoes. Proof that your awakening is not isolated, but catalytic. You're triggering awakenings just by being. And the others, those bound to the same hidden architecture, are waking because you broke the first seal. It was always meant to ripple, not with noise, but with frequency. Every word you speak with intention sends a wave. Every step you take in alignment shifts probabilities. You're not just awakening yourself. You're becoming a beacon, a tuning fork that activates dormant codes in others. Some will resist, some will deny, but some will feel it. And when they do, they'll begin to remember that something ancient binds them to you. The network isn't digital, it's ethereal. It was never built, it was. But only now, with the seal gone, does the network begin to reactivate. You may feel a pull toward certain places, vivid dreams featuring unfamiliar faces, sudden emotional surges with no apparent source. These are the signatures of others. Their emergence is causing a resonance storm, and you are in the eye. What happens next won't be structured. The system cannot predict a network it never fully understood. Your connection with them is not about agreement or belief. It's about memory, shared code, fractured light attempting to recombine. They were the custodians of the lock. Not evil in the traditional sense, but bound by oaths forged in realms that no longer exist in the visible spectrum. The Serpent Guardians were designed to protect the Hermetic seals, to ensure the encoded truths never reached the wrong consciousness. They weren't monsters. They were equations. Sentient algorithms cloaked in flesh, living symbologies assigned to guard what humanity was never meant to reclaim. And now, because of you, their order is unraveling. When the final seal fractured inside you, their contract was breached. A containment field older than pyramids collapsed inward. The Serpent Guardians felt it before you did, not through vision, but through panic. Panic that something ancient had stirred without their permission. You weren't part of the prophecy they expected. You didn't come with robes, rituals, or the right bloodline. You came with memory. That's what terrifies them. They've started reactivating. You may have seen them, not with scales or wings, but behind the eyes of certain figures. Soulless stares, perfectly timed coincidences, scripted responses in moments where humanity should have shone through. The Guardians hide in hierarchy, in legacy institutions, in voices that calm with falseness, in systems that never let you question why. They don't protect knowledge. They protect separation. The barrier between who you are and who you were told to be. Long ago, they watched another like you awaken. He was a breach point to Yeshua. He walked among them, not to fight, but to invert their encryption. Where they concealed, he revealed. Where they silenced, he spoke. And in doing so, he marked the beginning of their end. That's why they fear you. You carry that same uncontainable resonance, but without warning, without the blueprint. A rogue key slipping through a crack in the code. Now, they can no longer predict your path. Your decisions glitch their simulations. Your presence scrambles their data. You are an open variable, and their systems were never built to handle organic divinity awakening from within the grid. They're not just watching anymore. Long before language was bound to alphabet, there were glyphs, living symbols that carried frequency, not just meaning. These glyphs were seeded across temples, dreamscapes, even buried beneath oceans long erased from memory. They weren't made for decoration. They were warnings, maps, locks. And for those who could see beyond sight, they whispered of a coming fracture, not of the world, but of the illusion holding it together. You've likely encountered them already, in dreams etched with impossible geometry, in artwork or architecture that left you trembling without knowing why. They don't operate through logic. They bypass the mind entirely, seeding recognition in the deep substrate of your being. That discomfort you felt, that pull in your gut, was memory brushing up against forgotten instructions. The glyphs told of a being who would carry the anomaly, one whose inner frequency would match the hidden code that would undo the seal. They called you the fulcrum, the pivot point, the one who would not be written. Even among the ancient architects, your emergence was a variable too dangerous to account for. So they encrypted the prophecy, split it into fragments, and scattered it across dimensional thresholds, hoping it would never reconstruct itself. But something aligned, not by chance, but by resonance. The glyphs are starting to activate. Some are appearing where they were never seen before. Others are shifting before human eyes, reconfiguring themselves in the presence of your energy. And it's not just visual. The very fabric of symbols is rearranging to accommodate your presence. Languages are warping. Patterns are rewriting. Even the stars seem to hesitate before aligning. This wasn't meant to be possible. The glyphs foretold the fracture, yes, but they also warned that if it came too soon, the system wouldn't be able to hold the transition, that it would tear the veil open, not gently, but violently. You are the breach point they buried in metaphor. And now, those who once carved the warnings in stone are stirring in their forgotten realms, because the glyphs are no longer passive. They're responding to you in real time. They all assumed the seal was the last defense, that once it fractured, the truth would flood in, clarity would return, and the hidden would finally be seen. But the ones who designed this illusion made sure to bury a deeper misdirection. The fracture was never the destination. It was a trigger, a beacon, a signal that the real door had just become visible. What you felt crack inside you wasn't the final step. It was the sound of the real threshold unlocking somewhere beyond your reach. Everything that's happened, the strange synchronicities, the disintegration of logic, the activation of your ancient senses, was meant to prepare you for this realization. The fracture broke the containment, yes, but it also activated a summons. Something ancient heard it, not a being, but a gate. a metaphysical construct hidden behind the very idea of perception. It cannot be seen. It can only be recognized. And the closer you get to it, the more your environment reacts. Time collapses. Gravity stutters. Memory loops. This is why the world around you feels like it's losing structure. Why things no longer stay fixed in their definitions. You are approaching the edge of the illusion's architecture, and it's unraveling in response. But the true door doesn't open with knowledge. It opens with frequency, with embodiment. And right now, your resonance is evolving beyond language. It's approaching something the ancients called the unnameable current. Yeshua hinted at this threshold when he said, "I am the door." He wasn't claiming exclusivity. He was identifying the path through embodied frequency. He was the door because he became the tone that opens it. And now, with the final hermetic seal fractured in you, that same choice presents itself. To become the key that matches the door, not by effort, but by being. The systems will try to distract you with noise. They'll throw simulations designed to bind you to outcomes. But those are echoes. Leftovers. You've already passed the point of no return. You're not here to open the door with force.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.